Nathan Brooks straightened his luxurious tie in the shine of the elevator doors, a self-satisfied grin embedded in his core. Next to him, Olivia Sinclair, his intended bride, touched up her vibrant crimson lipstick from Dior, her sparkling engagement ring reflecting light and casting small prisms over the shiny metal. The ring weighed 3 carats, selected with precision, a concrete emblem of his achievements. Every aspect of his existence was chosen with care. "Do you believe Sophia will attend?" Olivia inquired, her tone a rehearsed, airy whisper. She closed her makeup case with a click, mirroring Nathan's feeling of closure. Nathan's grin grew taut. "Mia and Sophia were tight during university, but I question it. Our circles hardly intersect these days." He allowed the statement to linger, loaded with unspoken implications. His realm had risen. Hers remained stagnant. The split occurred 3 years prior, a precise separation. He convinced himself it was optimal. Sophia, with her kind nature and modest pursuits like sculpting, planting, and aspiring to a compact, eco-friendly architecture firm, had been a weight dragging him down. He thrived as a predator in the realm of investments, requiring a companion who navigated the same ruthless currents. Sophia aimed to preserve the environment with recyclable materials. He sought to dominate it through aggressive mergers. Olivia was his ideal accomplice. She grasped the dialect of elite meetings, the significance of a Cape Cod retreat, and the nuanced craft of advancing socially. She served as an elegant, driven adornment, shaping his existence to match his desired image precisely. The elevator doors parted onto the top-floor suite of the Ritz-Carlton, gazing over the sparkling skyline of Boston. Their acquaintances Alex and Mia were tying the knot at an expansive property in the Hamptons, and this prenuptial gathering marked the launch. The atmosphere brimmed with costly fragrances and the subdued buzz of prominent discussions. Nathan, my dear Mia, the future bride, hurried forward, radiant in ivory satin. And Olivia, you appear stunning. Olivia glowed. We couldn't skip it for anything. Nathan surveyed the space, a ruler inspecting his domain. He spotted venture capitalists he'd bested, competitors he'd defeated, and ladies now eyeing Olivia with keen jealousy. This represented his triumph circuit. He had systematically erected this existence layer by opulent layer atop the remnants of his serene, cozy union. He recalled the concluding dispute with Sophia, her gaze broad with unacknowledged pain. "But why, Nathan?" she had murmured, positioned in the lounge of their humble countryside residence, one she had adorned affectionately with artisanal pieces and containers of flourishing greens. "I believe we were content." "Contentment falls short, Sophia," he'd responded, the phrase bitter. "Even back then, I crave more. I merit more." He had trusted it then, and he trusted it now. He'd swapped peaceful satisfaction for exhilarating victories. He'd exchanged Sophia's gentle, roughened palms for Olivia's flawlessly groomed ones. By all standards he prized, it was a substantial enhancement. "Have you caught wind of who's funding the bubbly station?" Alex the groom slapped Nathan's shoulder, yanking him from his thoughts. "Victor Voss." Nathan's brows arched. "The Victor Voss, the innovation magnate. What's his link to you?" Alex chuckled. "Not to me, pal. To Mia. Evidently, he's a tight ally of one of her former university pals, a key financier in her companion's fresh enterprise. He's remarkably grounded for a person who could purchase this whole neighborhood with spare change." Nathan sensed a known surge of drive. A connection to Victor Voss might alter everything. He was an icon, a hermit who had forged a digital kingdom from his workshop and now stood as a giant in commerce and charity. "Which pal?" Olivia questioned, her gaze already roaming the area, undoubtedly estimating the possible prestige. "Sophia," Alex stated nonchalantly, gulping his beverage. "Sophia Grant. You recall her, correct, Nathan?" The title struck Nathan like a solid strike. The room's air abruptly thinned, the festive talk dimming to a faint din in his ears. He faced Alex, his meticulously built poise on the verge of fracturing. Sophia. His Sophia. Yes, buddy. She's around here. Alex waved loosely toward the bustling patio. Mia mentioned she's thriving. Launched some green architecture outfit that's evidently revolutionizing the industry. Voss is her main supporter. Insane, huh? Nathan's pulse raced against his chest. It couldn't be. Sophia, the lady who wept over a wilting flower, the lady who viewed a fruitful weekend as mastering a bread recipe, was associating with magnates. The ground appeared to shift under him. Olivia clutched his arm, her fingernails pressing lightly. "Well, isn't that charming?" she remarked, her tone laced with disdain. Nice for her, securing a wealthy patron. But Nathan ignored her. He fixated on the patio entrances, a chilling fear twisting in his gut. He had penned the concluding segment of their tale personally, portraying her as the overlooked, devastated spouse. It hadn't dawned on him that she could have initiated an entirely fresh narrative minus him. And by accounts, her novel plot was a hit. The Hamptons property was a tribute to inherited fortune, a vast antique manor with pristine grounds descending to greet the turbulent sea. The breeze was fresh and briny, a sharp difference from the oppressive vibe of the Boston suite. Yet for Nathan, the sensation of choking had merely heightened. He had devoted the whole evening revisiting Alex's statements, each part a minor piercing wound to his pride. Olivia, detecting his preoccupation, had grown more clingy, her palm a persistent marking on his limb. "Cease pondering her," she'd snarled in the vehicle en route. "This is our event. We are the dominant duo here, recall?" He recalled. It was the persona he had scripted for them. But now the dialogue seemed fragile, the phrases empty. As they proceeded toward the majestic hall where the event was scheduled, Nathan couldn't halt his scrutiny of the flawlessly attired assembly. He hunted for a specter, the specter of the lady he assumed he understood. He anticipated spotting her appearing misplaced, maybe somewhat worn, a female ill-suited in such splendor. And then he spotted her. She stood close to a grand stone water feature, conversing with the bride's parent. She wasn't misplaced. She was radiant. The time since their parting hadn't eroded her. It had polished her. Her locks, once bundled in a basic, functional braid, now cascaded in gentle, refined curls about her shoulders. She donned a rich sapphire blue gown that hugged her form in a manner both refined and irresistibly appealing. It was a shade she'd avoided during their time, deeming it overly daring. But the deepest shift was in her stance. The mild, regretful droop he hadn't observed until absent was supplanted by an upright, relaxed assurance. She chuckled at a remark from the elder lady, a true, unrestrained noise that pierced the courteous buzz of the group. It was the chuckle he recalled from their initial outing, a noise absent for years. A surge of something intense and strange engulfed him. It wasn't merely astonishment. It was a perplexing, undesirable mix of remorse and envy. He, Nathan Brooks, the individual possessing all, was envious of the existence his former spouse had constructed without him. Is that her? Olivia's tone was a keen murmur next to him. He sensed her evaluating Sophia from top to bottom, her sight pausing on the plain, yet obviously pricey style of the gown, the lone refined sapphire stud, the luminous sheen of her complexion. The gown's suits are fine. The subtle commendation was a keener affront than any direct critique. It was Olivia's method of reaffirming the order, but the sting failed. Nathan was too captivated. Sophia pivoted then, her gaze sweeping the yard, and for a pulse-skipping instant, they connected with his. There was no spark of anguish, no trace of yearning, merely a short, courteous acknowledgement, trailed by a tiny, nearly unnoticeable incline. Then she resumed her dialogue as though he were merely another attendee, an unknown in a finely crafted outfit. That nonchalant rejection hurt more than any emotional clash might have. He had presumed to be a dominant figure in her existence, a distressing recollection she couldn't discard. Instead, he sensed like an annotation she had scarcely deigned to peruse. "Let's fetch a beverage," he declared suddenly, tugging Olivia toward the exterior counter. He craved the known sting of whiskey to calm his jitters. As the server dispensed his drink, he observed her from afar on the grass. She was now chatting with a notable gentleman with graying locks and a steady, authoritative demeanor. The gentleman attended closely, his concentration solely on her, a slight, enchanted grin on his mouth. He brushed her arm softly, a motion of natural closeness, and she inclined toward him, her gestures conveying reliance and ease. "Who is that? A colleague, a companion?" The inquiry tormented him. "She's certainly polished up nicely," Olivia observed, tasting her sparkling wine. "I guess possessing a Tycoon beside you achieves that for a woman." Nathan sputtered on his whiskey. "What did you utter?" Olivia sighed dramatically, a sign of impatient dominance. "Oh, come on, Nathan, don't be innocent. I had my aide conduct some research this morning. Her firm, Eco Harmony Designs, is a favorite in the green industry, and her chief financier, the gentleman who serves on her council and holds 45% of the firm, is none other than Victor Voss. They've appeared at multiple benefit events jointly. The gossip columns label them the Green Elite Pair." She took another refined taste. "It appears your modest homemaker mastered the strategy after all." Nathan's fingers blanched where he clutched his tumbler. He glanced back at Sophia and the gray-haired gentleman. He viewed them with a fresh, terrifying sharpness. The gentleman's attire was perfectly fitted, yet subtle. His timepiece was a Rolex, but not an ostentatious version. He radiated a subdued strength that overshadowed Nathan's own showy accomplishments. This was him. This was Victor Voss. And he wasn't merely her sponsor. The manner he regarded her, the way she beamed at him, it was a dialect Nathan recognized deeply, a dialect he and Sophia had once communicated smoothly before he had lost the skill. He was observing Sophia and her fresh spouse. The nuptial event was a lovely occasion conducted in a floral yard facing the waves. The aroma of brine and blooms blended as Mia and Alex shared their promises. Nathan positioned beside Olivia, an empty figure in a custom outfit. He could sense the burden of Olivia's glare, her acute, dissecting stare drilling into his temple. She wasn't solely his intended anymore. She was his overseer, quietly challenging him to reveal any flaw in his mask. He couldn't concentrate on the promises. His thoughts were a storm, reliving the sight of Sophia with Victor Voss. It was one matter to learn she was prosperous. It was another to observe it, to witness the vivid, living evidence that her universe hadn't concluded with his exit. Indeed, her authentic existence appeared to have commenced precisely where he'd proclaimed theirs finished. The conductor, a friendly, engaging lady, was customizing the occasion. "Mia and Alex are deeply thankful for your presence, the individuals who have influenced them. They wish to extend particular gratitude to their guides, those who have directed them, not only in their professions, but in affection." Nathan's gut tightened. Alex naturally thanks his dad. And Mia, the conductor radiated, facing the initial row, desires to recognize a lady whose strength and foresight have profoundly motivated her. A lady who, following her own turning point, forged a fresh route, not merely for herself, but for a greener tomorrow. We are privileged to include her and her spouse today. Please applaud Sophia Grant and Mr. Victor Voss. A wave of courteous, grateful clapping swept the assembly. Next craned, Nathan felt numerous gazes upon him. Or perhaps it was his own suspicion. He observed as Sophia, placed in the front, offered a modest, humble grin, while Victor laid a palm over hers, his admiration for her cleared all. The title declared publicly in this setting was a fatal strike to the story Nathan had so diligently created. Sophia Grant, and Mr. Victor Voss. It wasn't simply a commercial setup. The conductor had uttered spouse. The term resounded in the vast hollow of Nathan's mind. Spouse. Olivia's hold on his limb was like a clamp. Grin. She murmured, her tone a quiet, menacing order. All are observing. He compelled his mouth into an imitation of a grin. It resembled molding stiff dough. He was a performer in a drama he hadn't tried out for, and he had just overlooked all his dialogue. He perceived it all now. The subdued assurance, the costly yet restrained gown, the spot in the front. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't fortune. This was her existence. The remainder of the event blurred by. He noted the ring swap, the embrace, the victorious exit, but it all seemed behind a dense barrier. His truth had narrowed to one scorching reality. Sophia was wed to a tycoon, a gentleman whose fortune was so immense. Nathan's own notable riches resembled a kid's savings jar by contrast. A gentleman renowned not only for his wealth, but for his wisdom, his vision, his discreet generosity. He hadn't merely been supplanted. He had been made entirely and utterly irrelevant. During the subsequent mingling session, the mood was exuberant. Servers roamed with platters of bubbly and elaborately crafted appetizers. Nathan felt an urgent desire to flee, but Olivia was already guiding him toward a cluster of individuals. "That's Daniel Hale," she whispered, her sight shining with drive. "He oversees the mergers unit at Vanguard Associates. You must converse with him." For the initial occasion, the idea of mingling, of ascending another step, felt sickeningly futile. What purpose did his minor realm serve when a genuine sovereign was present? But he enacted his role, clasping Daniel's hand, trading courtesies, his voice distant and alien to himself. His gaze persistently wandered, seeking the sapphire blue gown. He located her near the fresh seafood display, chuckling with a modest group. Victor was beside her, his limb resting gently on her lower back. He wasn't displaying her like a prize as Nathan frequently did with Olivia. He was merely with her, a silent, unbreakable pair. Nathan withdrew from the chat with Daniel Hale, disregarding Olivia's enraged scowl. He proceeded to the counter and requested another whiskey. Straight. As he raised the tumbler to his lips, he glimpsed his reflection in the glass behind the counter. He beheld the gentleman who appeared prosperous, assured, commanding. But it was falsehood. He was a phony. His whole existence was a meticulously arranged mirage of conquest. And the single individual meant to be his defeated adversary had just unveiled it all without uttering a word. The reality was a harsh medicine. He hadn't departed Sophia because she restrained him. He had departed her because he was too limited to perceive the scope of her aspirations. The arrangement of seats at a nuptial feast is a lesson in societal orchestration, a fragile network of partnerships, past romances, and prospective transactions. When Nathan and Olivia located their spot, a delicate, stylish note with their titles, Nathan's veins froze. Table 9, and straight opposite, 2 additional notes. Mrs. Sophia Voss and Mr. Victor Voss. It was intentional. Mia, in her marital joy, had either perpetrated a massive societal offense or was a brilliant tactician. Maybe she believed sufficient time had elapsed. Maybe she sought to compel harmony. Or maybe, Nathan pondered with a nauseating twist, she was merely recognizing the novel truth. Sophia now occupied a societal level demanding a prime position, and, as her previous husband, he was an essential, uncomfortable extension. "Oh, this is ideal," Olivia grumbled, her voice strained with anger as she settled into her chair. Her grin was a streak of scarlet, a caution. "Just relax, Nathan. We will be polite, engaging, and totally unaffected." It was a demanding request. Unaffected was the opposite of Nathan's state. He felt like an insect under examination. Shortly after, they appeared. Sophia advanced with a leisurely elegance that he now identified as the result of true self-confidence. Victor drew out her seat for her, a minor, polite action that seemed both traditional and profoundly personal. Nathan, Olivia, Sophia stated, her voice steady and balanced. There was no spite in it, no victory. It was the courteous recognition of a past associate. It's been ages. Sophia, Nathan uttered, his voice coarse. You appear healthy. It was the minimization of the era. She appeared splendid. Best wishes on your betrothal, she appended, inclining toward Olivia's jewel. Olivia, grasping the chance to display, raised her palm. Appreciate it. Nathan possesses flawless judgment. The suggestion was evident. He selected this. He selected me. Victor offered a hand over the surface to Nathan. His clasp was solid, his gaze a strikingly vivid green. They were clever, perceptive eyes that appeared to penetrate Nathan's pricey attire and into the vacant area below. Victor Voss, it's an honor to encounter you at last. I've learned much about Sophia's history, and I'm thankful for the path that guided her to me. It was a brilliant act of tact, both soothing and completely crushing. In one phrase, he had noted Nathan's presence, demoted him to history, and proclaimed his own success, all with a cordial, authentic grin. Nathan felt as if he'd been outmaneuvered in a strategy game he wasn't aware of participating in. The ensuing dialogue was a gradual, painful ordeal. Olivia, resolved to demonstrate her value, attempted to involve Victor in a talk about the markets, mentioning tech firms and economic patterns. I'm intrigued by the fluctuations in digital currency, she declared, striving to seem informed. What are your views on the enduring feasibility of blockchain finance, Victor? Victor provided her a tolerant grin. My views are that I hire individuals much brighter than me to handle it. I'm far more concerned with the enduring feasibility of our Earth. He then directed his complete focus to Sophia. On that note, love, have you shared about the fresh algae compound you're creating? It's remarkable. Sophia's expression brightened with an enthusiasm Nathan hadn't witnessed since their marriage's dawn. Oh, it's still preliminary, but the trials are encouraging. We believe we can produce a completely decomposable wrapping substance that's not just durable and resistant to moisture, but truly nourishes the earth as it breaks down. She glanced at Nathan, a hint of former mutual thrill in her gaze. Recall that concept I had for utilizing fungal networks? This is like the advanced version of that. He recalled. He recalled reclining at their dining surface, her gaze gleaming as she doodled plans on a tissue, discussing transforming the globe, and he recalled his reply. That's a cute pastime, Soph, he'd stated, tapping her palm patronizingly before resuming his financial summaries. But let's reserve the globe rescuing for the experts. The recollection hit him like a tangible impact. He had been the expert, and she was the one adjacent to a tycoon who deemed her concepts remarkable. How intriguing, Olivia remarked, her voice dull. So, you create upscale trash containers. The atmosphere thickened with implicit strain. Victor's grin remained, but his gaze chilled. Sophia, though, merely chuckled a bright, relaxed noise. Sort of, but we're aiming for the type of trash containers that aid in preserving a globe for trash. She then smoothly altered the topic, inquiring about Olivia's role in marketing, her manner free of mockery. Sophia was impervious. Olivia's minor jabs, which once would have driven her to sobs, now glided away. She was shielded in a subdued certainty that her novel existence and her novel spouse had bestowed. Nathan experienced a frantic, instinctual impulse to recapture some fragment of his former dominance. So, Victor, he stated, inclining ahead, I'm in investments, Brooks Investments. We've been pursuing bold strategies in the innovation merger arena. I'm certain you grasp the benefit of a forceful acquisition when an enterprise is lagging. He desired to appear as an equal, a kindred hunter, but the words emerged crude and awkward. Victor savored a leisurely taste of vino, his stare fixed. I do comprehend it, he replied, his voice gentle, but sharpened with resolve. I also comprehend the benefit of constructing things upward instead of dismantling them. It usually provides a superior yield over time, in commerce and in existence. The concluding words targeted Nathan's core directly. It was a precise hit, administered with exact accuracy. The remaining meal blurred in courteous, insignificant talk, but the boundaries were established. Nathan and Olivia, with their discussions of mergers and instability, were the wrecking team. Sophia and Victor were the designers crafting a superior, enhanced globe. And Nathan was starting to grasp with terrifying sharpness which faction he had selected and all he had ruined in the procedure. The nuptial ensemble was boisterous, performing a standard but rhythmic collection of hits. The dancing area with a whirl of soft fabrics and somber suits. Olivia, always the entertainer, was in her zone. She drew Nathan onto the floor, her form shifting with a trained, smooth elegance, her grin luminous and brilliant for their observers. "Move with me, love," she ordered, her voice a merry murmur that didn't fully conceal the firmness below. "We must appear as if we're enjoying ourselves immensely." Nathan obeyed, his form operating mechanically. He embraced her, twirled her, grinned when required, but his gaze continually strayed, returning to table 9. Sophia and Victor weren't moving. They were positioned near, immersed in a hushed exchange, their heads inclined toward one another. Sporadically, Victor would chortle, a profound resonant noise, and Sophia would brush his limb. They existed in their private sphere, an unbreachable sphere of mutual closeness that a packed dancing area couldn't breach. He recollected dancing with Sophia at their own ceremony. They had been awkward, giggling as they stumbled over each other's toes. They hadn't minded the watchers. Their delight had been theirs solely. With Olivia, each instant resembled a show, each grin a strategic action. As the tune concluded, Olivia aired her visage. "I require an image. The illumination here is ideal." She retrieved her device, skillfully locating her perspective, and raised it for a self-portrait. "Grin, Nathan." He compelled another grin. The burst fired, temporarily obscuring him. Olivia promptly started pressing the display, her forehead creased in focus. "The description must be flawless," she whispered, more to herself. "Honoring romance with my romance. No, too ordinary. The upcoming Mr. and Mrs. Brooks. Yes, that's superior. Bold." Nathan observed her, an abrupt, startling feeling of separation overtaking him. He viewed her not as intended, but as an outsider fixated on shaping a story. Their whole bond was a sequence of meticulously arranged images, clever descriptions, and calculated public outings. It was a label, not a link. He withdrew, craving fresh air. He stepped onto one of the rock patios. The chilly evening breeze a relieving contrast. The noise of the waves, a consistent, patterned surge, was a calming offset to the turmoil in his mind. He overheard two ladies conversing near the railing. He identified one as a notable gallery owner for Boston. "Oh, and her firm is genuinely groundbreaking," the gallery owner was stating. "Sophia Voss is the authentic article. She possesses more honesty and insight in her small digit than most executives I know. I learned her previous spouse is present," the other lady said in a secretive murmur. "The investment fellow. Can you envision being the gentleman who released that lady? And for what? That minor marketing woman who's been uploading self-portraits all evening." The statements were like blades in his spine. He slipped off before they could notice him. His cheeks aflame with a humiliation so fierce it was nearly tangible. He withdrew to a calmer section of the property, a tiny isolated yard illuminated by twinkling bulbs. He needed to reflect, to absorb the complete destruction of his truth. All he had labeled as achievement, his riches, his occupation, his lovely intended, now seemed like inexpensive fake metal. He had pursued the facade of an ideal existence, while Sophia had silently proceeded and erected a genuine one. His device vibrated. It was Olivia. "Where are you?" "Folks are observing." Another vibration. "Daniel Hale inquired about you." "You're shaming me." And another. "Nathan, return immediately." He disregarded the notes, collapsing onto a chilly rock seat. He contemplated Sophia's enterprise, eco-harmony designs. He recalled her thrill, her midnight doodling concepts, her conviction that she could effect change. He had termed it a diversion, an interruption. He had deprived her aspirations of the sole element they required to flourish, his faith in her. And now another gentleman was nurturing them, and they were blooming into a woodland. The noise of steps on the pebble trail made him glance up. It was Olivia, her visage a veil of icy wrath. "There you are," she snarled, her voice subdued and poisonous. "What do you believe you're doing? Concealing in the foliage like a kid? You are destroying all." "I just required some breeze, Olivia," he stated, his voice fatigued. "Don't deceive me," she retorted. "This concerns her, doesn't it? You're mortified. I can perceive it on your face. You can't tolerate that your timid minor former spouse succeeded in catching a larger prize than you." Her statements, so direct and businesslike, hit a sensitive spot. "Is that all this represents to you, Olivia? A rivalry? Who captured the larger prize?" "Certainly it is," she declared, her voice elevating. "That's what it's perpetually been. We triumphed, Nathan. We possess the superior existence, the superior tomorrow. Why are you permitting her to affect you? She's insignificant. She just got fortunate." But he knew with a sureness that froze him to the marrow that it wasn't fortune, it was merit. Sophia had an inherent merit that he had been too sightless to discern. And Victor Voss, a gentleman who could possess anyone or anything globally, had discerned it plainly. "Perhaps we didn't triumph," he stated softly, the idea forming as he voiced it. "Perhaps we just picked a distinct reward." Olivia gazed at him, her impeccably tinted lips separated in incredulity. "What does that imply?" "It implies I'm exhausted, Olivia," he stated, gazing not at her, but at the far, apathetic stars. "I'm exhausted of the act, of the descriptions and the images, and the perpetual draining labor of it all." The fury in her gaze was supplanted by a spark of dread. She had erected her tomorrow on the base of their alliance, on a label of Nathan and Olivia. She was witnessing the initial alarming fissures emerge in that base. "Don't be absurd, Nathan," she stated, her voice mellowing a bit, becoming convincing. "You're merely sentimental. It's the ceremony, the unrestricted drinks. Let's return indoors. We'll move. We'll grin. And tomorrow, this will all be overlooked." She extended for his palm, but he withdrew. The opulent enclosure he had so arrogantly built for himself abruptly felt very tiny and very, very frigid. And for the first time, he was earnestly contemplating how to escape. The gathering was starting to conclude. The elder attendees had left, leaving the dancing area to the most persistent celebrants. Nathan had rejoined the hall with Olivia, but the gulf between them was now a tangible entity. They stood jointly, but they were distances apart. He was performing the routines, a phantom at the banquet, his thoughts distant. He needed to converse with her, not to reclaim her, not to express regret in hopes of another opportunity, but to comprehend. He needed to learn from her. He needed to understand how the serene, modest lady he had wed had evolved into this fortress of poise and prosperity. He spotted his opportunity when Victor was drawn aside by the groom for a concluding festive smoke on the porch. Sophia stayed at the table, savoring a tumbler of water, a minor, tranquil grin on her face as she observed the final movers. "I'll return shortly," he informed Olivia, his voice permitting no debate. He approached the table, his pulse thumping an anxious beat against his ribs. He felt like a youth nearing his initial infatuation, awkward and unsure. "Sophia," he stated, his voice milder than planned. She glanced up, her look indecipherable. "Nathan, may we converse just briefly?" She paused, then offered a slight incline, indicating the vacant seat beside her. He seated, the gap between them loaded with 3 years of unvoiced past. "I merely wish to express congratulations," he commenced, groping for the correct phrases on all. "You're firm. It's astounding. I'm delighted for you." To his astonishment, he discovered he meant it. Under the strata of surprise and damaged pride, there was a true flicker of admiration. An authentic grin graced her lips. "Thank you, Nathan. That signifies something. How did you accomplish it?" he inquired, the query unrefined and sincere. "After I departed, I never envisioned." She regarded him, her gaze clear and straightforward. There was no sympathy in them, only a steady, contemplative insight. "In a sense, Nathan, I accomplished it because you departed. When you were absent, there was this enormous quiet void. Initially, it was frightening. It was packed with all my doubts and all the elements I thought I wasn't without you." She halted, savoring a taste of water. "But then gradually I began to occupy that void with my own tone, my own concepts. All the elements I had silenced, because I feared they weren't substantial enough or striking enough for your realm. I initiated eco-harmony designs with the $6,000 I had in my individual reserves operating from the shed. It emerges my foolish diversions had promise after all." The expression his own rejecting phrases lingered in the space between them. He recoiled, but she didn't appear to utter it with spite. It was just a declaration of truth. "Victor arrived subsequently," she proceeded. "I was presenting for another funding cycle at an environmental innovation summit. He was the main presenter. He listened to my presentation, viewed the model, and he didn't just perceive an item. He perceived the foresight behind it. He trusted in it. More crucially, he trusted in me. The plainness of it was ruinous. He had insisted she conform to his realm. Victor had merely entered hers and assisted her expand it. He's a fine gentleman," Nathan stated softly. It was a confession of loss, but also a true remark. "He's the most compassionate gentleman I've ever encountered," she answered. And the manner she stated it with such plain, undecorated assurance was the ultimate, conclusive end of their segment. He had to pose the query that had been scorching in his thoughts all evening. The central concept for eco-harmony designs, the decomposable compound. "You discussed that with me once, didn't you?" "Years back." A trace of a recollection passed her visage. "Yes," she stated. "I did. It was merely a notion then, something I'd encountered in a research publication. I was so thrilled. I outlined it on a tissue for you at our old celebration location, Bella Vista." He recalled. He recalled being irritated that she was diverted, that she was discussing fungal wrapping when he was attempting to commemorate an advancement. "What did I respond?" he inquired, though he already knew the response. He needed to hear the seal being secured on his fate. Sophia glanced away briefly out at the sea, visible through the large hall panes. "You informed me it was a pleasant notion, but unrealistic. You said, 'Soph, you have a kind spirit, but you lack a knack for commerce. Adhere to what you're skilled at.' And then you balled up the tissue and requested the server for the bill." There it was, the instant, the small, apparently minor instant where he had not just rejected a concept, but rejected her, the very essence of who she was. He hadn't just neglected to back her aspiration. He had actively squashed it, discarding it like refuse. And from that tossed tissue, she had erected a kingdom. Victor hadn't provided her the concept. He had only fostered the kernel that Nathan had attempted to inter. He felt a deep, stomach-twisting humiliation. It was a humiliation that delved deeper than career envy or societal mortification. It was the humiliation of a gentleman who had been granted a scarce, valuable present, and had been too conceited and too sightless to acknowledge its worth. "I'm regretful, Sophia," he murmured, the phrases feeling completely insufficient. For all, I was an idiot." She ultimately glanced back at him, and for the first time he discerned a spark of the old, known gentleness in her gaze. "Yes, you were," she stated, not harshly, But our conclusion, Nathan, was my commencement. I've accepted that. I hope you can too. Victor was approaching them. He beamed at Sophia, a personal, affectionate beam, before inclining courteously at Nathan. Sophia rose, placing her palm in her spouse's. They were a flawless, integrated duo. "Good evening, Nathan," she stated. And with that they pivoted and departed, leaving him solitary at the table with the specter of a bald tissue and the complete oppressive burden of his decisions. Observing Sophia and Victor depart felt like observing the waves recede, leaving him isolated and alone on a desolate coast. The tunes of the gathering, which had diminished into a faint underlying murmur, now resurged with force, each thump of the rhythm a taunting beat against his empty torso. He staggered back to the counter, the server now offering him a gaze of tired recognition. "Another whiskey, sir." "Make it double," Nathan croaked. He consumed it swiftly, the sting in his throat a pleasing diversion from the blaze in his essence. He was no longer just ashamed or envious. He was mourning. He was lamenting the gentleman he could have become, the existence he could have possessed if he hadn't been so engulfed by the superficial measures of achievement he'd chosen for himself. He spotted Olivia across the space. She was conversing with Daniel Hale again, chuckling a bit too noisily, brushing his limb a bit too frequently. She was operating. Even now, with her intended in the midst of a sentimental breakdown, she was connecting, utilizing the circumstance, guaranteeing her own status was safe. He viewed her in that instant with a frightening sharpness. She wasn't his ally. She was his joint investor in the collaborative project of their communal persona, and his value was dropping. He averted, unable to observe. He roamed through the majestic corridors of the manor, his feet guiding him without purpose. He passed merry clusters of people unaware of his personal torment. He felt unseen, a ghost lingering on the fringes of their happiness. He discovered himself in a study, a silent paneled chamber lined with bound volumes that likely hadn't been accessed in generations. He sank into a profound armchair that smelled of age and antique pages, the double whiskey sloshing in his grasp. The exchange with Sophia replayed in his thoughts, each term a new injury. You balled up the tissue. How had he been so sightless, so haughty? He had regarded her and perceived a restriction, a household being who couldn't grasp his lofty goals. He had characterized her by her connection to him, never once pondering the extensive, unexplored domain of her own capability. He thought he was the lead in their tale, when in reality he had been the antagonist in hers, the barrier she had to surmount to discover her own excellence. In Olivia, he had selected her because she was the antithesis of Sophia. Keen, driven, skeptical, she communicated his dialect. But he realized now that it was a dialect of deals, not bonds. Their affection wasn't a haven. It was a conference room. Their tomorrow wasn't a mutual vision. It was a consolidation. He retrieved his device. Mechanically, he accessed Olivia's social profile. There was the image from before, the upcoming Mr. and Mrs. Brooks, the description read, followed by a series of labels. Ceremony atmosphere. Elite duo. Tomorrow shines. It was a deception, a shiny, altered, impeccably framed deception. There was no tomorrow. Not for them. He couldn't resume enacting that role. The outfit no longer suited. The gentleman in that image, beaming blankly beside a lady displaying a gem ring, was an outsider to him now. He pondered Victor Voss. The gentleman possessed all Nathan had ever desired, riches immeasurable, authority, esteem. But he bore it all so effortlessly. He hadn't been boasting his prosperity. He had been honoring his wife's. His authority was subdued, assured, grounded in something authentic. Nathan's was noisy, fragile, a frantic act to persuade himself and the globe that he was significant. The study entrance squeaked open. It was Olivia. Her grin was absent, her visage rigid and devoid of all facade. "There you are," she stated, her voice frigid. Concealing once more. I'm not concealing Olivia. I'm reflecting. Reflecting on what? How you're going to slink back to her. It's somewhat delayed for that, Nathan. The Tycoon opportunity has passed. This isn't about her any longer, he stated, glancing up at her. The liquor had removed his own facades, leaving only a unprocessed, agonizing truthfulness. This is about us. This is what we possess. It's not authentic. She emitted a brief, sharp chortle that contained no amusement. Not authentic. The 3-carat gem on my digit feels quite authentic, Nathan. The loft we're relocating to next month feels authentic. All we've constructed is authentic. We haven't constructed anything. He countered, his voice rising. We've assembled an image. We've gathered a collection. This isn't a bond. It's a strategy. And I'm withdrawing. The hue faded from her visage. The veil of the driven climber dropped, exposing a lady who was abruptly, terrifyingly exposed. What are you declaring? I'm declaring I can't continue this. I can't be the gentleman in that image. I don't even recognize who he is. He rose, the motion unstable. I devoted the last 3 years believing I was advancing, that I was succeeding, but I was just fleeing from a reality that I wasn't sufficient for a lady like Sophia. Not because I wasn't wealthy enough or prosperous enough, but because I wasn't gentleman enough to perceive her for who she truly was. He regarded Olivia, and for the first time, he viewed not a reward to be secured, but another individual who had accepted the same deception he had. And I'm not sufficient for you either, Olivia. Not the gentleman you desire me to be. You don't want an ally. You want a resource. And this resource is declining rapidly. Tears formed in her gaze. Tears of fury and exasperation. You're an idiot, Nathan. You're discarding all for specter for a recollection. No, he stated, his voice ultimately steady. I'm discarding the specter, the act. For the first time in a long period, I crave something authentic. He walked past her out of the study and out of the existence he had so diligently and so erroneously built. The gathering was finished. The extended evening of his judgment had just started. The journey back to Boston was a mute 5-hour trial. The air in the vehicle was dense with unexpressed blames and the demise of a tomorrow. Olivia gazed out her pain, a solitary furious tear marking a trail through her flawless cosmetics. Nathan merely drove, his palms clutching the wheel, his stare locked on the infinite road ahead. There was nothing remaining to express. They had already voiced it all in the study. They separated at the entry to their resident structure, the one he would now abandon. She removed the gem ring from her digit and placed it on the vacant rider's seat without a term. The action was frigid, conclusive, and businesslike. The termination of an agreement. The following few weeks were a haze of arrangements and self-examination. Nathan relocated, discovering a tinier, plainer residence in the city center. He listed his loft for sale. He attended work, but the excitement of the exchange area, the rush of a forceful acquisition, it was all absent. It felt like a contest he no longer comprehended the guidelines of, or perhaps had never wished to participate in initially. He was adrift. He had devoted so long characterizing himself by his drive, by his belongings, by the lady on his limb, that without them he wasn't certain who he was. He was tormented by the gentleman in the reflection, a stranger with weary gaze, an existence full of costly items that brought him no delight. One stormy weekend, he found himself unpacking a container of ancient possessions he'd recovered from storage, items from his existence with Sophia. He located an old image collection. He sat on the floor of his bare new residence and leafed through the sheets. There they were, younger, less refined, but undeniably joyful. An image of them on a trekking excursion coated in dirt. An image of them in their initial small residence coating the walls themselves. An image of Sophia in her plot, her visage beaming with pride over a line of uneven veggies. He perceived it then. The riches he had discarded hadn't been financial. It had been a riches of mutual instance, of basic pleasures, of genuine bond. He had exchanged it all for a collection of hollow triumphs. He had one concluding, uncomfortable exchange with Olivia when she arrived to collect the last of her items. She was collected, her shield firmly restored. "I hope you discover whatever it is you're seeking, Nathan," she stated, her voice empty of feeling. "Some minor portion of genuine average sorrow, I assume. I hope you discover what you're seeking, too, Olive," he replied with no spite. He realized he did. He hoped she located a gentleman who desired to be the resource she was seeking, who would find delight in their mutual drive. She wasn't an antagonist. She was just a lady who desired a different existence than the one he now knew he required. After she departed, he sat in the quiet, feeling not the sorrow she'd forecasted, but a peculiar, unknown sense of tranquility. It was the tranquility of yielding. He had ceased battling to be someone he wasn't. A few days subsequently, he spotted an article digitally. It was a piece in Business Insider titled "The Pioneers of Eco-Harmony: How Victor and Sophia Voss Are Forging a More Sustainable Future." There was an image of them positioned in a meadow. Sophia grasping a minor flourishing seedling. They weren't facing the lens. They were facing each other, their grins authentic and unprotected. The piece outlined the astonishing work they were performing, not just with her firm, but through their fresh charitable organization, committed to supporting green ventures and ecological learning. It discussed Sophia's enthusiasm and Victor's steadfast backing. The former Nathan would have been engulfed by a poisonous mixture of jealousy and anger. But the gentleman sitting on the floor of his bare residence felt something distinct. He felt a subdued sense of wonder, and he beamed. It was an authentic beam, not for a lens, not for an audience, but for himself. He was truly delighted for her. Her prosperity no longer felt like a mirror of his defeat. It was merely her tale, a tale he was honored to have once been a minor part of. He shut the computer. The ceremony in the Hamptons had been a burial, the passing of his pride, the passing of his delusions, and now, in the silent wake, something fresh was starting to develop. He didn't know what his tomorrow resembled. It wouldn't be as shiny or as majestic as the one he had planned, but he knew with a certainty that rooted deep in his bones that it would be his. It would be authentic, and for the first time in a very long time, that was more than sufficient. 7 months elapsed. The periods shifted, coloring the city in the softened hues of late fall. Nathan's existence had been reduced to its fundamentals. He'd sold the loft and the showy luxury vehicle. He'd departed his intense position at Brooks Investments, accepting a role at a smaller, more principled funding group that concentrated on socially conscious projects. The compensation was a portion of what he used to earn, but for the first time, he didn't feel like he was trading his essence with every deal. His new residence was humble, but it had a tiny terrace. On it, he had positioned a few big containers. He devoted a weekend at a nearby plant shop, clumsily posing queries about dirt and flow. He was attempting to cultivate peppers. Most of the initial efforts had faded, but one tiny plant was now persistently producing small red produce. He found a ridiculous amount of pride in it. He was reconstructing his existence not from the peak downward, but from the base upward. He re-established ties with old companions he had ignored during his unyielding ascent. The ones who knew him before the drive had overwhelmed him. He had tea with his sibling, who told him, "It's nice to have my sibling back. I didn't much like that executive you were feigning to be." He was learning to find delight, not in gaining, but in encounter. The flavor of a finely prepared tea, the satisfaction of an extended jog along the harbor, the fulfillment of assisting a minor, significant firm obtain the resources it needed to expand. His realm had become tinier, quieter, and infinitely more meaningful. One brisk December day, he was strolling through a produce market in downtown Plaza, savoring the lively disorder. He was purchasing a portion of artisan bread when he heard a known voice. "They're lovely, aren't they?" He pivoted. It was Sophia. She was solo, attired in basic pants and a cozy knit, holding a fabric sack filled with fresh produce. For a pulse-skipping moment, the world seemed to decelerate. "Sophia," he stated, his voice faltering slightly. "Nathan," she beamed, a cordial, relaxed beam that held no phantoms. "Imagine encountering you here. I reside nearby now," he stated, gesturing vaguely, experimenting with the uncomplicated life. He meant it as a humble jest, but it was the truth. "It's not so uncomplicated, is it?" she stated, her gaze sparkling. "It takes much more effort to cultivate a root than to speculate on a share." He chuckled, a true, effortless chuckle. "You have no notion. I'm currently battling pests on my pepper plant. Try a bit of herbal spray," she recommended casually, and converse with them. They appreciate the care. They stood in a comfortable quiet for an instant, the busy market swirling around them. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was serene. Two individuals who had once shared an existence, now standing as two distinct, complete persons. "I viewed the Business Insider piece," he stated. "What you're doing is incredible. Truly. Thank you," she stated. "It feels wonderful. It feels like what I was always destined to do." She halted, her stare reflective. "You appear fine, Nathan. You appear serene." It was the greatest praise he could have obtained. Not prosperous, not dominant, not affluent. Serene. "I'm progressing there," he confessed. "It's a journey, unlearning many poor patterns." "Life is a journey," she concurred. "Victor is in the area for a meeting. We're just attempting to capture a few ordinary instants, like purchasing costly greens." She raised a large cluster with a smile. He beamed back. There was no envy, no remorse, just a subdued gratitude for this lady and the path she had undertaken. He was thankful to have known her, thankful for the harsh, essential lesson she had unintentionally imparted. She had been the spark for his own change. "Well," she stated, adjusting her sack, "I should depart. He'll be curious where I've wandered. It was nice to see you, Sophia. Really nice. You too, Nathan." She pivoted and departed, vanishing into the throng. He observed her go, a feeling of deep tranquility settling over him. He hadn't needed her pardon to be liberated. He had needed to pardon himself. He compensated for his bread, the warmth of the portion seeping into his palms. He glanced down at his own palms. No ostentatious timepiece, no indications of a recent grooming. They were just palms. Palms that could now distinguish between quality dirt and poor. Palms that were learning gradually how to construct things that endure. He had a long path ahead, but for the first time, he was walking in the correct direction on a route of his own creation toward a tomorrow that felt genuine and true. And that was a fortune no sum of wealth could ever buy.